the enduring life and legacy of Tony Bennett. Anthony Dominic Bendito was born on August 3, 1926, at St. John's Hospital in Long Island City in Queens, New York. He was the son of a grocer, John Bendito, and a seamstress, Anna. He was the first member of his family to be born in a hospital. His father had immigrated from southern Italy, and his maternal grandparents had immigrated in 1899. Other relatives also came over as a part of the mass migration of Italians to America. He grew up with an older sister, Mary, and an older brother, John Jr. Their father was ailing and unable to work, so the children grew up in poverty. His father instilled a love of literature, art, and a compassion for human suffering in Tony, but died when he was just 10 years old. Because he lived through the Great Depression as a young boy, it would forever impact and change his outlook on life itself. He grew up listening to the vocals of Al Jolson, Eddie Cantor, Judy Garland, and Bing Crosby, as well as jazz artists like Louis Armstrong and Jack Teagarden. His Uncle Dick was a tap dancer in vaudeville and gave him an early window into show business, and his Uncle Frank was the Queensborough Library Commissioner. After Tony's father had passed, he was already singing by the age of 10 and performed at the opening of the Triborough Bridge, standing next to Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia. Quickly, he began singing for money at the age of 13, performing as a singing waiter in several Italian restaurants around his native Queens. He attended New York's School of Industrial Art, where he painted and studied music, later appreciating the emphasis they instilled in him on proper technique. At the age of 16, though, he had to drop out to help support his family, where he then worked as a copy boy and a runner for the Associated Press in Manhattan. During this time, he always set his sights on a professional singing career, returning to perform as a singing waiter, playing and winning amateur nights all around the city. In November of 1944, Tony was drafted into the United States Army during the final stages of World War II. During this time, he moved from France and later into Germany. In March of 1945, he joined the front line of what he would describe as a horrible time. While in his company, he saw bitter fighting and cold winter conditions, often hunkering down in foxholes. During his time in combat, he narrowly escaped death on several occasions. He would later write, "Anybody who thinks that the war is romantic obviously hasn't gone through one," and would say, "It was a nightmare that's permanent. I just said, that is not life, that is not life." At the war's conclusion, he was involved in the liberation of a concentration camp, where some American prisoners of war were being held. He would write in his autobiography, "I saw things no human being should ever have to see." He sang with the 314th Army Special Services Band under the name Joe Barry. This was a name he started using before the war. He would play with many musicians who would also have post-war singing careers. Upon his return to the States in 1946, he studied at the American Theater Wing on the GI Bill. He was taught the bel canto singing discipline, which would keep his voice in good shape throughout his entire career. He continued to perform wherever he could, including while waiting tables. He made a few records as Barry in 1949 for a small outfit called Leslie Records, but they all failed to sell. In 1949, Pearl Bailey recognized his talent and asked him to open for her in Greenwich Village. She had invited Bob Hope to the show, and Hope decided to take him on the road with him, and simplified his name to Tony Bennett. In 1950, Bennett cut a demo of Boulevard of Broken Dreams and was signed to the major label Columbia Records by Mitch Miller. It was Miller who warned Tony not to imitate Frank Sinatra, who was just leaving Columbia Records at that time. His first big hit was Because of You, a ballad produced by Miller with a lush orchestra arrangement from Percy Faith. Soon it started gaining popularity on jukeboxes, then reaching the #1 spot on the pop charts in 1951, and it stayed there for 10 weeks, causing the record to sell over 1 million copies. Bennett's recording of Blue Velvet was also extremely popular and attracted screaming teenage fans at concerts, specifically at the famed Paramount Theater in New York. His third #1 hit came in 1953 with Rags to Riches. This song, unlike Bennett's earlier hits, was an up-tempo big band number, topping the charts for 8 weeks. Later that year, the producers of the upcoming Broadway musical Kismet had Bennett record Stranger in Paradise. This song too reached the top, and the show was a hit. It was then that Bennett began a long practice of recording show tunes. In 1955, the rock and roll era began, and the dynamic of the music industry drastically changed, causing it to become harder and harder for existing pop singers to do well commercially. Even so, Bennett continued to enjoy success, placing 8 songs in the Billboard's Top 40 during that latter part of the 1950s. With his hit In the Middle of an Island reaching the highest at #9 in 1957. In August through September of 1956, Bennett hosted an NBC Saturday night television variety show known as The Tony Bennett Show as a summer replacement for The Perry Como Show. In October of 1962, he sang on the initial broadcast of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, being a smashing hit. It was in 1962 as well that Bennett released his recording of I Left My Heart in San Francisco, a decade-old but little-known song originally written for an opera singer. At the time, this song only reached number 19 on the Billboard's Hot 100. It spent close to a year on various other charts and increased Bennett's exposure. Over time, the album of the same title was on the top 5 hits, and both the single and the album achieved gold record status, and the song winning the Grammy Award for Record of the Year and Best Male Solo Vocal Performance for Bennett. Over the years, this would become known as Bennett's signature song. In 2001, it was ranked 23rd on a list of the most historically significant songs of the 20th century. Later, Bennett's following album, I Wanna Be Around, in 1963, was also a top 5 success. The following year brought the Beatles and the British invasion, and with them, still more musical and cultural attention pointed and focused towards rock and roll and less to pop standards and jazz. Tony was a firm believer in the civil rights movement, having participated in the 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches. He performed in the Stars to Freedom rally the night before Martin Luther King's How Long, Not Long speech. On February 12, 1952, Bennett married Ohio art student and jazz fan Patricia Beach, where they had met at a nightclub a year before at his performance in Cleveland. Together, the couple would have 2 sons, Danny, born in 1954, and Day, born in 1955. They separated in 1965, their marriage becoming a victim of Bennett spending too much time on the road, amongst other factors. In 1969, Patricia sued him for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and in 1971 their divorce became official. Bennett became involved with actress Sandra Grant while filming The Oscar in 1965. And on the 29th of December in 1971, they quietly married in New York, later having 2 daughters, Joanna and Antonia. And the couple stayed married until 1983. It wasn't until the late 1980s that Bennett met his third and final wife, Susan Crowe, a former New York City school teacher. And on June 21, 2007, they would marry. Once the rock movement was in full swing, Tony found himself struggling to sell records. And between 1965 to 1975, he had intense years of struggle. At the time, there was great pressure on singers to record contemporary rock songs. He was initially very reluctant, and when he tried, the results pleased no one. When he was reflecting on that time in his life, he compared it to when his mother was forced to produce a cheap dress. By 1972, he had departed Columbia Records and relocated to London, where he hosted a television show from the Talk of the Town nightclub, in conjunction with the Tony Bennett at the Talk of the Town. For his musical career, he tried a variety of approaches, but found no renewed commercial success. And in a couple more years, he was left without a recording contract altogether. Because of this, he decided to take matters into his own hands, beginning his own record company, known as Improv. It was then that he recorded some songs that would later become favorites, such as What Is This Thing Called Love? And the album Together Again. But unfortunately, Improv lacked a distribution arrangement with a major label, and by 1977, it was completely out of business. As the 1970s came to an end, Bennett found himself with no recording contract, no manager, and no money. For a while, he was living way beyond his means, and the IRS was trying to seize his Los Angeles home. After a near-fatal event in 1979, Bennett called his sons Danny and Dave for help. Quickly, they helped their father, and Danny signed on as his father's manager. They got his expenses under control, moved him back to New York City, and began booking him in colleges and small theaters to get away from his Vegas image. In 1986, Tony was re-signed to Columbia Records, this time with creative control, and released The Art of Excellence, becoming his first album to reach the charts since 1972. The theme song Life in a Looking Glass from the Blake Edwards motion picture That's Life in 1986, sung by Bennett, received a nomination at the Oscars for Best Original Song. His son Danny began regularly booking his father on Late Night with David Letterman, a show with a younger, hip audience, followed by appearances on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, Sesame Street, The Simpsons, Muppets Tonight, and various MTV programs. In 1993, Bennett played a series of benefit concerts organized by alternative rock stations all around the country. Bennett continued to record, first putting out the acclaimed Look Back, Astoria, Portrait of an Artist in 1990. Then emphasizing themed albums such as the Sinatra homage, Perfectly Frank, in 1992, and the Fred Astaire tribute, Stepping Out, in 1993. Perfectly Frank and Stepping Out achieved Gold Star status for the Best Traditional Pop Vocal Performance, this being Bennett's first Grammy since 1962. New audiences continued to reach Bennett, especially after his appearance on 1994's MTV Unplugged. The show attracted a considerable audience and a great deal of media attention. The resulting MTV Unplugged Tony Bennett album went platinum, and besides taking the Best Traditional Pop Vocal Performance Emmy Award for the third straight year, He also won the top Grammy Prize for Album of the Year. Following his extraordinary comeback, Bennett prospered financially, and by 1999, his assets were worth roughly between $15 to $20 million. He had stated he had no intention of retiring, referring to masters such as Pablo Picasso and Fred Astaire. Right up to the day they died, they were performing. If you were creative, you get busier as you get older. So he continued to record and tour steadily, playing 100 shows a year by the end of the 1990s. In concert, he would often make a point of singing one song without any microphone or amplification, demonstrating his skills at vocal projection. For his contributions to the recording industry, Bennett was given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 1560 Vine Street, and was inducted into the Big Band and Jazz Hall of Fame in 1997. He was later awarded the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2001, and received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers in 2002. On December 4, 2005, he was the recipient of a Kennedy Center Honor. In 2006, Bennett turned 80 years old. His recording label celebrated by releasing reissues, compilations, and the album Duets, an American classic, which reached the highest chart position ever and won a Grammy Award. In September of 2011, Bennett released Duets 2, a follow-up to his first collaboration album in conjunction with his 85th birthday. He sang duets with 17 prominent singers of varying techniques, such as Willie Nelson, Aretha Franklin, and Carrie Underwood. In 2014, his album Cheek to Cheek debuted at number 1 on the Billboard charts, extending the 88-year-old Bennett's record for the oldest artist to do so, earning him the Guinness World Records for oldest person to reach number 1 on the U.S. album chart with a newly recorded album. On August 19, 2016, shortly after his 90th birthday, he was honored by the unveiling of an 8-foot-tall statue in his likeness in front of the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. That same year, he performed at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and the Rockefeller Center tree lighting on November 30th. On August 12, 2021, 9 days after his 95th birthday, Bennett's retirement from concerts was announced. Something very few know about Tony was that he was a successful painter, done under his real name of Anthony Bendito or just Bendito. He followed up his childhood interest with professional training. He would sketch or paint every day, often of the views out of the hotel windows when he was on tour. His paintings and drawings have been featured in Art News and other magazines, and have sold for as much as $80,000 apiece. Many of his works were published in the art book Tony Bennett, What My Heart Has Seen in 1996, and in 2007, Tony Bennett in the Studio, A Life of Art and Music, which became a bestseller amongst other artistic books. Tony Bennett died at his home in New York City on July 21, 2023, following a 7-year battle with Alzheimer's disease. Tony Bennett's legacy and memory will continue to go on and be cherished. Thank you so much for watching Cultured Elegance. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video, and comment down below telling me your favorite song by Tony Bennett. You can also consider becoming a channel member today to have exclusive perks for members only. And I'll see you in the next video.